thousands of companies, he said, are leaving. Joining me is the panel, Senator Pauline Hanson, One Nation leader, and Senator James Paterson of the Liberals. James, should we be blaming Donald Trump for this trade war and the risks it causes to our economy, or should we be forgiving him?
Andrew, trade is not a zero-sum game. If another country is growing well, it doesn't come at our expense. In fact, the opposite. We want China to go strongly for their own sake, but also for our sake. And it's in America's interest that China grows strongly. No country has ever taxed its way into prosperity, but that's what a tariff is. It is a tax on your domestic consumers. So, like the government has been saying for a long time, we hope this dispute de-escalates quickly in our interest and the interests of the world.
Of course, though, he's responding to Chinese tariffs in the first place, it seems. Pauline, just more news to worry us that the economy there seems to be more risks to our future than possible sunshine.
Well, that may be the case, and it depends on how you look at it. See, Andrew, I'm not for getting rid of our tariffs. I believe that by getting rid of tariffs, free trade worldwide, we've destroyed our own industries and manufacturing. Where's our car industry? Where's our white goods industry? Where's our clothing, footwear industry that provided jobs in Australia? Because we got rid of tariffs, we're now bringing in this cheap rubbish from overseas, China and India, other countries, and we destroyed our own industries. Donald Trump has put the tariffs on his country. What has he done? He's actually boosted his own economy by actually producing the jobs and the industries and manufacturing that is giving jobs to Americans. So the fact is that the Lima Declaration that we agreed to in the 1970s was to sell third world countries our raw materials and we'd buy back the finished products, and hence we've destroyed our own industries and manufacturing. So I'm for put tariffs on, protect our industries, start up our industries and manufacturing again, produce jobs in Australia for Australians.
You on board on that one, James?
Absolutely not, and the economic data contradicts that every day of the week. There are more Australians employed today than there ever have been in our history, and one of the reasons for that is because of the amazing success that we've had on the free trade front. The free trade agreement secured under this government in the last decade alone has added hundreds of thousands of jobs to our economy and incredible prosperity for us as Australians, because it opens up export opportunities for our employers here domestically, and it makes goods more cheap for consumers. It's a win-win.
But Pauline,
James,
this is the thing.
In the 1960s, in the 1960s we had 2.6% unemployment in the 1960s. What is it now, James? 5%? All right, you keep bringing in students into the country, over 500,000 last year. Over 500,000 students taking jobs from Australians. You're bringing in foreign workers into Australia, you know, and you haven't looked after the workers here in Australia. Where's our industries and manufacturing? You keep pushing people to further education. They shouldn't have to go on to further education. We need jobs for the people who are not academically minded, instead of throwing them on the scrap heap, which your government is doing. That we need to provide jobs for those Australians out there in industries and manufacturing, producing goods at quality, not the cheap rubbish that we see coming into the country from China and from India. Throw away.
James, I'm totally on board.
Products.
I'm totally on board. Actually, I'm totally on board the free trade bandwagon in theory, because obviously what someone else produces cheaply, we can then get cheaply. What we produce cheaply, they get cheaply, and we both are better off. But to pick up a point that Pauline made there, one thing about this has been our cost of labour. We're priced out of it, and the jobs that have gone tend to be blue-collar jobs, and I do worry about the lack of blue-collar jobs for people that prefer to work with their hands, you know, heavy industry, all that kind of stuff. That's got to be of some concern.
Andrew, we're coming up to almost 30 years of unbroken economic growth. It is a world record. No other country comes close. And there's no way we would have achieved that if we went back to the past of a closed economy. When Australia had a closed economy, we were a much poorer country. Many fewer people were employed. The quality of goods that we were able to purchase were seriously inferior and much more narrow in range. Our prosperity today is greater than it ever has been. And
but the blue-collar jobs, that's the only thing.
To our free trade. Look, Andrew, that's absolutely a concern, but the fact that there are more Australians employed today than there ever were before is evidence of that. I don't think that any job is inherently more valuable or less valuable than another one.
Except, of course, that's a product in part of the huge immigration intake we've put on. As Pauline says, the inflation rate's gone up, not 5%, Pauline, 5.2 now. So I don't know if that's a great sign. But listen, I want to switch topic. Pauline, on June 11, right, so more than a month ago, the ABC's The Drum mocked you for suggesting schemes for developing Australians. And then it smeared you. Here are the parts I'm referring to.
So you get this kind of deal-making that gets done with Pauline Hanson demanding all those really rational things.
We'll talk about that in a moment.
She won't get them for $25 billion, I can promise. It's going to cost much more than that.
Pauline Hanson was sentenced to 3 years jail for electoral fraud.
Look at everything that happened with One Nation that is morally questionable, and you go, why are they not falling on their swords?
Pauline, I'm astonished that no one on that panel corrected that statement. And I'm even more astonished it took the ABC exactly 1 month to finally post a correction to that last statement about you being jailed by saying, oh, yeah, it admitted the Drum should have made clear that after an appeal to the Court of Appeal, the conviction against you was quashed. Or to put it in plain English, you were innocent and the case against you was an absolute farce. Does it shock you that it took, like I say, the ABC a month to say sorry for that claim, that it should have taken a minute to check on the internet, and then to put the correction not on the program itself, not on the page of the program itself, but somewhere else on the internet that almost no one reads?
Well, you are absolutely correct, Andrew, in what you say. This is why I present it to the Parliament to actually, in legislation, in the Charter of the ABC, to make it fair and balanced. The ABC have never been fair and balanced. Very few. If I talk to the ABC, it will be to regional and rural ABC radio, which I find there's no problem with them whatsoever. The Drama will never go on. They are so biased in their reporting, and it doesn't surprise me whatsoever of putting that across. Yes, I was found not guilty on appeal, and I should never have been charged in the first place after spending 11 weeks in maximum security in prison. So it's that's the ABC for you. It will not change, and we keep pouring over $1 billion into this leftist organisation that push their own agenda, and it's not fair and balanced. Maybe James Paterson will take the message back to his government again to actually get that put into the Charter, which should be, so that people like myself and other Australians can get the truth from the ABC. Remember, we are paying for it.
James, look, I actually find you one of the people that most understands this issue, so sorry to have you be the lightning rod here, but there is a problem here, and I do wonder whether the Liberals need to realise that until the ABC's reformed, it's training up a whole generation of voters to vote anti-you.
Believe it or not, Andrew, I actually got my start in the media appearing on the Drum panel many years ago, and in my naive youth, I used to defend the Drum as one of the programs on the ABC that made at least a token effort to include different perspectives. But it has long since become completely unwatchable. It now has an effective ban on my former colleagues at the IPA from appearing on the program after previously happily having them on for years. So I completely understand the frustrations that many Australians have with the ABC and the Drum in particular.
Yes, well, Pauline, talking about apologies that I think should be made, does it surprise you that Year 12 students in Victoria got a VCE practice exam paper, as I said in my editorial, a VCE practice exam paper that claimed as a fact that Arab families in Israel who practice the Islamic faith rather than the Jewish religion were persecuted, and that when a person was discriminated against like that, they could become religious extremists, as in, it's Jews, bad Jews, that's causing terrorism. Does that surprise you that that paper goes out to students and it went through peer review and everything, and it took ages to get pulled out?
It absolutely, I cannot believe that this has been allowed to happen. Why are we mentioning this in our schools to Year 12 students? I cannot believe that this is the case. I'm sick and tired of hearing the Jews being attacked all the time. Why? Why can't we get over this hatred towards whether it's a religious organisation or whether it's a cultural difference or whatever? I heard you speaking earlier tonight in your program about racism and everyone having a go, and if you're making racist comments. I'm so over it, Andrew. I really am. What is wrong with people? You've got to listen in and check up on people and what they're saying, and we've got to pull everyone up that you can't have opinion or say anything. It's people pushing their own agenda. Why can't people live in peace and harmony? Why have you got to go out and attacking everyone all the time? And I, for one, I've had a gutful of it, and I think the general public have. Why can't we just get on and live in peace and harmony with each other and understand that we're all human beings?
Yeah, well, look, I agree, although I kind of like debate. That's how you get to some truth. But, James, this is not a debate. This is saying it's a fact that basically blame Jews. I mean, how does a paper like that get out in front of VCE kids?
I have no idea, Andrew. It's profoundly disturbing that anyone thought that that was an appropriate question to put on an exam for students, and that it was an accurate representation of the Israel-Palestine conflict. I mean, it shouldn't need to be said, but let's get to the heart of it. Israel is not the reason that we have anti-Semitism in this world. Israel is the answer to anti-Semitism in this world. All racism is evil, but anti-Semitism is one of the oldest, deepest sicknesses of humanity, and not just in the Holocaust, but throughout history, Jews have been persecuted because of their beliefs. So it's completely understandable why Jews feel comfort and security in having a Jewish state, a strong Jewish state in Israel. And the fact that students, high school students, are being taught a libelous version of that story is a disturbing thing.
I think so too. Pauline, talking about some of the words getting thrown around, the abuse. Climbing Uluru is going to be permanently banned in October, supposedly for cultural or religious reasons. And Labor frontbencher Linda Burney criticised you this week for opposing that ban. Here she is this week. Have a listen.
Pauline Hanson has just shown her ignorance again. You wouldn't have people clambering over St Mary's Cathedral.
Does that argument change your mind?
Not at all. She's the one who's ignorant. Actually, Paddy Uluru, who was the traditional owner of and the elder of it, in the 1970s said he's got no problem with tourists climbing the rock. If they're stupid enough to do it, let them go for it. He said it wasn't about the rock. He said it was the secret and the sacredness was to do with the land. Now you have people like the Aboriginals want to close down the beach over in Western Australia. They want to shut down other areas in Australia. You know what? This land belongs to all Australians that are here, regardless whether you're born here, whether you're Indigenous or whether you have migrated here. Everything about this country, the iconic rock, the beaches, the land, the national parks, it belongs to all Australians. I'm sick and tired of the segregation that because you're Indigenous and for cultural beliefs and reasons, no Aboriginal born on the same day and date and time as me has more right to this land than anyone else. Because we have to live in harmony. I'm sick of the diversity that is actually happening.
Pauline Hanson,
Correct.
James Paterson.
I am Indigenous to
James,
this land.
I'm letting you off the hook because we're out of time. Pauline Hanson, James Paterson, thanks for your time. More after the break.